afterwards, you're all welcome to come up to Carl's cabin, and he has a book that he'd like you to sign. Also, if you have a book you would like autographed or something else signed, he would be glad to, except for checks. He doesn't sign any checks.
Ooh, that's getting stale.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharsmith.
Thank you, Tom. It's my bed.
Yeah.
I'm trying to reach my bandana. All curled up in there. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of frost in the meadow this morning, so.
Was there?
Yeah. So I picked this autumn one.
Wish I
Nice orange color one.
Oh, thank you, Thomas, again. Well, I have two letters here. One that I want to open first. A week ago, there were a bunch of old men up here. They were all friends of mine. They were all boys when I took them on hikes. Like on this particular occasion, it was 1970.
No, 30.
Huh?
1930.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, shucks.
Time's flying.
Oh, well, you'll say, oh yeah, it says spring 1930. That's right. Now, those men were all boys of around 12, no, a little older than that. When we went on a glorious hike in the Sierra, we lived down in Los Angeles. They were all Hollywood boys. And as the years went by, some of them became quite prominent in their own lines. And they were here as boys, and you can see here. The name of our gang was, as you see it there, Trail Finders. Trail Finders. And this is one of the papers. See, it still goes on. We don't have the boys' groups anymore, but the things that were prepared for boys are still there. They have a magnificent camp in the mountains near Riverside. What are the name of the mountains?
San Jacinto?
San Jacinto, thank you. Yeah, and camp and buildings that were all built when I was with them, and they are, of course, the whole estate is given over to UC for educational purposes. But in here, which would interest you most, is the account of the trip that we were to take. This is a preliminary announcement of the High Sierra trip for 1930. Now, by golly. It doesn't say anywhere that I was in charge. Anyway,
Take your word for it.
yeah, that summer trip took place in the year 1970. 1930, I beg your pardon. It had been preceded by at least two others, so we knew our ropes. Those boys were all older boys. I was given charge of the older boys. Boys 17, 18, around in that age there. And long I had wished we could take a hike in where the mountains were big. We had spent all of our energy on the old San Gabriels, but then we looked forward to this. Now this one was to take place May 1st, 1930. Yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, the party will meet at the Hollywood Library, 7:30 Friday morning. Mail check, the cost of transportation was $16. Mail the check for the full amount to Trailfinders, Swartout, California. Bring $6 extra cash. That's all the boys had. And a pack sack. Oh, here's the equipment. that each boy was to bring. 2 or 3 wool blankets or sleeping bag, toilet articles, change of underwear, 2 extra pairs of woolen socks, cooking utensils, steel frying pan, 8 inches in diameter, 2 tin buckets, about 1.5 pints each, and nesting if possible, a metal plate, cup, fork, and spoon, 6 blanket pins. You know what blanket pins were?
Yeah.
We used to pin the blankets on horses with safety pins that were that big. That's a blanket pin. Horse blanket pin. There's a lever. Yeah. Piece of canvas. Grub. These people that go backpacking, they go to the grocery store to get all their grub. We made it ourselves. Grub. 3 pounds of prepared flour. That was for flapjacks. 1 pound of rice, 1 pound of sugar, 1.5 pounds of sliced bacon. Small lard can with a tight cover. 1/2 pound of dehydrated soups. They were made in Germany. Pound of shelled nuts, pound of sleeping, a pound of eating chocolate. 3/4 of a pound of dehydrated baked beans. See below. It is here how to make dehydrated baked beans. Procure canned baked beans. The variety called beanhole beans are good. Spread out on a shallow pan and dehydrate in a slow oven. You pour that into a bag and you add water and you have beans all ready for you. That was our rations. Oh yeah, frying pan, cooking pots should be put in muslin bags, and some fishing tackle, flies, brown hackle and royal coachman, heavy woolen socks, heavy woolen socks must be worn. Shoes, not boots, must be stout and well fitting. Proper footgear is of primary importance, as this is to be a strenuous mountaineering trip. Special care must be taken as to choice of footwear. Ordinary shoes, even if new, fall to pieces after a few days. Your shoes should be of medium weight, so forth, hobnailed, but not excessively. Heavy soles with medium weight Swiss edging nails. Those were hobs they got from Switzerland. They're fastened around the margin, and then they clamp out on the outside, made of iron, not steel. Yeah. Tell you how to fix on these edging nails. I have some at home, so. Edging nails may be procured, and he tells the address there in Portland. Place about 1 inch apart, singly or in pairs around the edge of the sole. Punch a hole with a strong awl and clinch the protruding nail around the edge of the sole. And that locks in the nail that covers the outside. So those are Swiss edging nails. You can't buy them anymore, I'm sure. Anyway, that was our trip. Now, it gives the itinerary where we're going to go. Bishop's Pass, Doozy Basin, Agassiz Needle, Mount Giroud, Mount Goddard, Mount Heckle, Spencer, and Mount Darwin, and the Glacier Divide, Humphreys Basin on Mount Humphreys, out over Paiute Pass. We did all that, climbed all those peaks. Now, what do you think of that? Isn't that great? And these boys were here a week ago, all graybeards, and singing the songs we used to sing around the campfire. Isn't that great? And then I have one other nice little thing here. You ought to pass it around there. Catch hold of it. See what I was reading. Sorry I can't reach it. About a week, maybe it was a week, 2 weeks ago, we had a service for our dear friend here who worked on the pass. You remember who he was? Ferdinand, yes. Ferdinand was a wonderful fellow, and he died. And at Groveland we had a services, and we also had them up here at the pass. And at Groveland, I was asked to say a few words about our dear Ferdinand, and he was very fond of a poem that he would start to recite the moment he saw me when I arrived at the pass. I knew the poem fairly well, so we would chant it together. But I was asked, well, I hope to give it there at Groveland, at this memorial, and I flubbed it. And by the kindness of a friend, she sent me a copy of that poem that Ferdinand loved to recite. He had it down cold. It's called The Last Leaf. The Last Leaf. By Oliver Wendell Holmes. I saw him once before as he passed by the door, and again the pavement stones resound as he totters o'er the ground with his cane. Where's my cane? They say that in his prime, ere the pruning knife of time cut him down, not a better man was found by the crier in his round through the town. But now he walks the streets, and he looks at all he meets, so forlorn, and he shakes his feeble head, that it seems as if he said, they are gone. The mossy marbles rest on the lips that he had pressed, in their bloom, and the names he loved to hear have been carved for many a year on the tomb. My grandmama has said, poor old lady, she is dead long ago, that he had a Roman nose, and his cheeks were like a rose in the snow. But now his nose is thin, and it rests upon his chin like a staff. And a crook is in his back, and a melancholy crack in his laugh. Oh, I know it is sin for me to sit and grin at him here, but the old three-cornered hat, and the breeches and all that, revolutionary, are so queer. And if I should live to be the last leaf upon the tree in the spring, let them smile as I do now at the old forsaken bough where I cling. Isn't that a lovely poem? And for Ferdinand, he just loved this poem. I thought you might like to hear it. And I, thank goodness, one of the ladies sent me a copy. Well, those are the essentials that I wanted to give you this morning about our trail finders and the things we did and how we did them. And then to wind up with a note about dear Ferdinand. Yeah, I've been holding this in abeyance until this morning, getting all reviewed with it, so I wouldn't bumble. Well, in those days, you know, hiking wasn't popular. That came in only a few years ago, about the time when they named our backcountry Wilderness. Ooh. That made it more romantic, see. Same thing, it's still backcountry. And people are taking up hiking with packs. That's all quite new. But it amuses me. Everything they need to take along they can buy in stores. There's no longer the need to make it yourself. Otherwise you wouldn't have it. Yeah, and then the grub too. Nothing like these things they buy in the store. And then too, the poor deers have to take a stove along. Isn't that terrible? With all the timber in the backcountry. Well, there's a mixture of fun and, well, kind of a, how do you look at things now, as I have told you? I hope they're an improvement. The Tuolumne is still here. It hasn't changed a bit in 60 years. The sun metal here hasn't changed. A penny for your thoughts.
Do you think it was that much more work then to go for a trip back into the backcountry than it is now?
Oh, I think not. If your pack was well made and you weren't overladen, you could do it the same today. It's still all here, quite unchanged. Quite the same. But maybe it was a little more of a challenge in those days because they didn't have guidebooks. Yeah, they amuse me. One night at the campfire, I was talking about something of that sort, and they say, you want wilderness. Well, in the store, you can buy a guidebook on what to see. You take the trail this way, and back over there, when you see a big rock, that ain't a rock, that's a bear, see? It's all prepared for you. You don't have to figure it out for yourself. Well, nevertheless, I'm sure they had fun.
Were you ever lost in the Sierra? Did you ever get lost?
Oh, gee. No, I don't think I ever. Oh, I've been confused for a couple of days.
Never was.
Some years ago, I thought to myself, gee, I ain't ever been lost. I wonder what it feels like to be lost. I'm going to get myself lost, see how it feels. Down here toward a dome at the far end of the meadow there, I climbed around until I thought I was lost. See how it felt. I wandered around, and I climbed a dome nearby, and there I found that I was. Too simple to get out of. Yeah, Daniel Boone was asked the same question, and his answer was no, but I was confused for 3 days.
How were the bears then? Did you see bears there?
Oh, back in the wildwoods, I guess, that took time for bears to find out backpackers.
Mm-hmm.
Up until then, we didn't have trouble with bears in the backcountry.
Mm-hmm.
In your book, you talk about Pee-wee finding a mountain lion out there with a tail 6 feet long.
Sweet pea.
Sweet pea, rather.
Who said that?
Sweet pea.
Who?
Sweet pea?
Did he say
Fred,
that?
that's what your book says.
The old bounder, there's nothing of the sort. Yeah, I haven't seen Sweet Pea this summer. That's his name. Hey, Sweet Pea. He's a great fellow. There we are. What's next? Well, I should emphasize that one of the mainstay for meals was cooked dehydrated baked beans. It was simple and it solved the problem of the full stomach at the end of a day's hike. It was tasty and good. You ask your mom if she'll boil a bunch of pinto beans for you till they're nice and soft. And then afterwards, if you can spread them out on a pan and put them in the oven and dry them. And then you can pour them into a sack and carry them lightly. And when you get to camp, you just take out the amount you want, add water, bring it to a boil, and there are your beans back again. That was our mainstay. One of the boys, Nelson Neese, God bless him, he's no longer living. He had a riddle. Why is the end of our trip always like a wedding? Can you answer that?
Like a wedding.
Because all that we have left is rice and old shoes. Oh, dear Nelson. He would think of something like that. Yeah, the boys, they stuck to our grub program there. I shall never forget, one day we were about to leave over the pass to go over the outside. And we came to was it a camp? It had looked like a grocery store attached to it. And the first one we had seen in 2 weeks. And there were tempting signs outside talking about Hershey bars, stuff like that, you know. And I wondered what the reaction of my gang was that were trading behind, all plotting with our packs. We had been out for 2 weeks. And I wondered if they'd all make a beeline for that grocery store to buy candy bars and stuff like that. Not a one of them paid the slightest attention. We marched right on by. Yeah. And then, too, when we got to the bottom of the mountains, might have been either the west side or the east. In the east, I remember, there was an old fellow with a truck that would pick us up. And we were hungry, too, at the end of the day. And, well, should we cook dinner? Well, by golly, we're down here where the flesh pots are. You know what the flesh pots are? Do you read your Bible?
Oh.
Flesh pots, yeah. So they don't stop you to buy a junk, you know, in the neighboring stores. We're going to go all the way to Mojave on this old truck with Mr. Garland and get a square meal at the Fred Harvey restaurant. And we did. Yeah, the old Fred Harveys were still running those days, and the Santa Fe ran by there. So that was the kind of discipline the boys had, you know, just within themselves. Wonderful. And every year, a bunch of them comes up here to try to relive the old times. They all go on hikes. Yeah, some of them, if not all of them, were are prominent men in their own right. Yeah, in government and civil works. Yeah, quite prominent. Yeah, they all turned out good. And then there was dear Nelson. He was on my first High Sierra trip and on my last one too. He was a chemist for the Pacific Coast Borax all of his life. He knew more about borax than any other chemist in the country. He was an expert on borax. Oh, he was such a dear. He was always on every one of our trips. He was the one that invented the joke about why is the end of our trips like a wedding. And it touches me now. One day I was sitting at home quietly, and a car drove up, and Nelson walked to my door. There seemed to be something wrong with him. He couldn't speak. He stuttered and trembled. I said to him, Nelson, you shouldn't drive your car when you're in this condition. He just nodded his head and smiled. And the next day I learned that he had died. He had come to me at his deathbed, that boy. Oh, dear nothing. His daughter came up this last week. She's a lovely girl. So, there you are. Well, it's been so grand to be with you. And I suppose if I were to answer some question, it might evoke some memory in my head. Do you have anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On Dana Plateau, there were 3 plants that you said grew only up there, and I can't remember them.
Oh, yes. Dana Plateau is an exceptional place. It's a great plateau that appears when you come to stand on it. It appears to be barren, nothing but rock over a square mile of a fairly level country that finally drops off sheer 3,000 feet on the east side, like a great wall. It appears to be perfectly desolate, no life there, whatever. But oh, don't you ever think it as you walk about. You see all kinds of interesting things. Rocks, the lichens, the flowers. And up there, it seems as though some of the most precious, rare things have found a home. And you don't find them elsewhere. And so you crawl about on your hands and knees and you make discoveries. I have. Yeah. One time we were visited by a tremendous thunderstorm. And this plateau was level. There's not a tree or a truck you want to get under. So we made ourselves small. We sat on the ground and covered our heads with our tarps and let it come. Oh boy, was it. Between our feet, the hail came. We saw the hailstones ricochet back and forth like bullets. And the little flowers in between the rocks, you'd think be all cut to pieces. We saw it happening there, but when the storm finally subsided and we rose to our feet, those flowers were quite unharmed. They still bloomed as prettily as ever. Then you understand what John Muir said. These mountain darlings are saved by 1,000 miracles. And yeah, that fits the situation.
Were you acquainted with Roller Starr?
No, I never knew Starr. But that is a little reminiscence too, a very indirect one. A man by the name of Norman Clyde made himself very, very famous in his own local way in the number of peaks he climbed before anyone else. And he was one of the people to try to find the body of Starr that had fallen on those rocks there. He was out all of the time with a big gang of men that came, and that after many days, they all gave up and went back to their homes. But Clyde thought he would remain to look a little more. And he did, and he told me. He said, I was climbing one day after the gang had left, and I sat on a rock right near those pinnacle rocks, and a yellow jacket flew by me and landed on a rock, and I watched it. I said, aha, this is the end of the trail. I looked around, and there was the body. The yellow jacket had led him to it. Yeah. They're cannibalistic, yellow jackets are.
Mm-hmm.
You won't look at that. Yeah. That was Clyde. He would find bodies when everyone else had given up.
If they were to ever name something after you in Tuolumne, a meadow or a peak, would you have a preference?
No, although that's been threatened for many a year.
What would you want to have your name?
Oh, I had my eyes on one, but I don't think they'll choose it. It's right south of Mount Lyell. It's called Electra. Like that, it's a pinnacle. But no, they won't choose something over 13,000 feet. That's too good for me. I found one up here, north of Gaylord Lakes. It's 12,002 feet. Hi. 12,002. Oh, that has come up over the years more than once. But you have to be good and dead before they name a pig farm. You have to go through the geographical board. All that. Yeah. Well, now, you see, a little item come to my mind. And so we are. Like a time after a campfire, a little infant, about 3, wasn't to be found, and his parents looking all over for it. They were all looking downhill for a child of 3 that was lost. Finally, someone says, little babies don't crawl downhill when they're lost, they crawl uphill. Did you know that?
No.
I suppose that's true. And we found the child.
I remember that one.
So beautifully quiet here. One day we had a thrill. We were sitting up by the ranger station, and a coyote appeared, running along those trees right over there. That was a surprise enough. But what a surprise. Instantly, the meadow was filled with the erect bodies of ground squirrels, hundreds of them, peering and sitting bolt upright, watching that coyote. You never knew this meadow would hold so many animals. This little dog. Oh boy. One night there was a bunch of Boy Scouts at a campfire here, and one of the others gave a talk. And the other man that worked with me, he said, did you hear what that scoutmaster said to the kids? He asked them, did you put that side of bacon in the garbage can so that we can take it to the government? The government doesn't need bacon, but we did. Well, we made a beeline for it, but the bear had beaten us too.
What do you do if you see a bear?
No, nothing of the sort. Well, there are all kinds of statements issued what to do if you meet a bear. You're supposed to not to worry him, but make a lot of noise. Try to shout him away, but don't try to approach him. Try to scare him off with some noise. The old-fashioned way was to beat on tin pans and things like that. And it worked after a fashion. I have had only one encounter with a bear. That's only been recently. I was about to turn in and I noticed the screen door of the neighboring tent thrust open, broken, and a big bear trot out. And I turned and looked at him. I said, why, you big bum, what are you doing stealing in there? I never saw a more shame-faced person as that bear. Just, yeah, it really was. He was really quite conscience-stricken.
How about the bear cub that was stuck up in the tree, Carl?
Oh, that's a story. Thanks for reminding me. I think this is a very interesting story. One of our rangers here many years ago was told by some campers that a mother bear and her cub were down at the campground, that the mother bear was trying to coax its cub down from a tree up which it had climbed to the top. And neither of them moved, And so it went there. The mother bear worried and all of that. Ralph went down there and looked to see what it was up. And he saw that up way at the top of that tree where that little bear clung and bawled down to its mother, that there was a sparkle around its neck, like a necklace of beads or glass. He correctly sized up the situation. The very intelligent fellow came back and got his .22 rifle and went back to the spot, and taking steady aim at that necklace that sparkled around the little cub's neck away about 50 feet above the ground, shattered that glass object without hurting the little bear a bit. Cub came down, joined mother, and everything was all right. What had happened? The bears that the night before, probably, had found a big glass jar, and the cub, smelling something inside it, stuck its head in, but couldn't pull its neck back out, and went around among the rocks and smashed the jar, but left the neck of the bottle around his neck. That's how it happened. But Ralph was the one to solve the situation. But yes, that shot 50, 60 feet from the ground without hurting the bear. Yeah, that's the story of Ralph. He had another little story, I think, worth telling. Two women, I don't know whether they were young, anyhow, that doesn't make any difference, decided to go on a hike. And they came away from Tuolumne to find a trail going north to 10 Lakes. It was about noon when they emerged from a portion of the trail that crossed a little creek, and they decided to stop for lunch. And during that interval, they got into some disagreement that ended in a very fierce situation there that made them both sorry later on. But anyway, the upshot was one of the girls said, well, I'm going to hike with myself. I don't go with you. So she took off to the point which had been their objective. And the other girl, now she was alone, she began to regret her untoward remarks to her friends. Sat there quite some time moping, I guess, until the afternoon shadows began to fall. Decided that perhaps it might be time to go home, that her friend had not returned. Perhaps she had found her way to the camp from another trail. She came home. Her friend didn't return. Oh, what to do? All night long that didn't occur. Well, it's something to do something. Hey, Ralph, will you look into this situation? And he did. He found the spot where the two had had their altercation and their little fire where they had made a spot of tea, and the tracks of the sister leading off toward 10 Lakes. Down that little creek where they had stopped for lunch were the tracks of the girl that was in question. It started to go down the mountainside, gently, then steeper, until finally it was too steep, because many of the creeks which rise in this upland plunged down into canyons, and this was such a situation. And the farther she went, the more concerned she was, until she was quite frightened and didn't know what to do. She had read somewhere that, in a Boy Scout book, I guess, that if you get lost in the wilderness, the thing to do is to follow down a creek till it becomes a river, and you follow down that river until you find white settlements. So she remembered that little account there. She went as far as she dared. But by that time, we'll say, the next day had dawned, and Ralph was on his way, treading carefully along that creek, finding her tracks leading down, down, down. he finally realized that his own going was so steep that he might roll a rock, and if she was sitting down below, that would be very, very unhappy. Well, anyway, he finally came to the drop-off and leaned over, and there she was, sitting on a rock with her legs dangling over a cliff, sitting quietly, looking at the scenery, trying to while away the time, at the same time just hanging on for dear life. And Ralph, quite aware of the tenuousness of that situation, leaned over with his hat off so as not to frighten her. "Good morning, ma'am." And she turned with her arms toward him, said, "Oh, Ranger, I knew if I get lost, a ranger would come." So it all ended quite peaceful. That was Ralph. So you see, we have some pretty good rangers here. Resourceful, intelligent, able. Oh boy.
How about the time that Helen went up to Glacier National Forest?
Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. The girl I married, God bless her, she's no longer living. When she was still in college, she and her girlfriend thought of taking a long camping trip. And the place that they wanted to go for their long hike and camping was Glacier National Park. That's way up near the Canadian border. Helen had a little Model A Ford, and they took off and went on their camping trip. And in order to leave the car in a safe, conspicuous spot so they'd find it, they left it by a lake, marked the locality carefully in their mind, and were gone for quite some time. Eventually they returned. They came to the spot where they believed the car had been left, but lo and behold, there was no car there. Oh, that was just strange. They didn't know what to do. They looked up and down. There was one object in the landscape that hadn't been there when they had left the car. It was a big Blackfoot Indian teepee. Now, if you've been up in Glacier, you've seen the Blackfoot camps. Maybe you've seen their teepees, and they're huge, beautiful structures. That's all there was there. What were the girls to do? Oh, they figured, well, maybe by and by, if we wait, the owner of the teepee will come back and tell us where our car is. Maybe he'll know. They waited, and in due time, sure enough, the Indian appeared. They told him their tale of woe. He reared up and folded his arms and looked very seriously down at them. "You want to see your car? You look inside teepee." Sure enough, he had somehow, I think what he did, he put the teepee over it. The doorway wasn't big enough. Well, whereupon, after that lesson had sunk in, there were no words necessary. He turned upon them with the most serious expression and said, "My grandfather, he always put his teepee here. My father, he always put his teepee here. Me, I always put my teepee here. Next time you know." The poor man had to dismantle the teepee to get the teepee far out and then put it up again.
Great story.
That's a true story, because Helen was given over to telling fibs and making up stories. Me too.
don't think that's in the book.
But she used to get things balled up when she tried to tell a riddle. She had one. I'd like to think of it for her. So I'll get it straight. Oh, the riddle was, she asked the group, what would you do if you found a horse in the bathtub? She thought they had the answer. Until everybody gave up. No, we don't know. What would you do if you found a horse in the bathtub? She said, you pull out the stopper. Everybody roared with that. The answer was, you pull out the plug. She thought she made a hit. You pull out the stopper. Oh, she's darling. Well, Tom, I can't think of anything else unless something comes up. Oh, you're not Tom. You're in there. Oh, you're in the background. Well, that's all, people. So, shall we tunnel back?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I enjoyed it as much as you. Oh, yeah. Tell me your name, please.
Tom.
Just Tom?
Tom. Well, I could tell you the last one, but you might not believe it.
Is the pen out?
Oh, let's see. You do it.
To Tom.
Yeah. I'm a fellow keyboard player.
Yeah. Either have it at the lodge or at the visitor center.
What's the date?
Today is the 29th of August.
'43?
94.
94.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having a good time. Yeah. Wonderful.
Oh, I forgot to call my totem.
Oh, you have a totem. There's a trail up the mountainside?
That's right.
Beautiful. It looks familiar. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. It's a wonderful book.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I do say so myself.
Backwards?
No, yeah, they got them backwards.
Well, not backwards, but they have this one here.
Now that's Helen. Now it's a few pages previous. It shows when she said it was my first, and it wasn't all. I had only one. There you go.
Well, there's the one with the alpenhorn.
I can find
I
it
didn't know
pretty
you played alpenhorn.
I didn't know it was. That one was chained to a rock. You couldn't walk off it.
Have you played the accordion yet this season?
No, it's sitting in there. I think there's a lady here. She'll have me over now. See her. Oh, there she is. Oh, there's Bess. Yeah, now you got the finger on the two places. Yeah, that was my first sweetheart. But here's a picture of home. Yeah, that's my first sweetheart.
That's bad. That's bad.
This the same. And the other finger, that's Helen.
Yeah.
She had the caption.
Yeah, wonderful text. Yeah.
If you want to make it shorter, that's fine, because they're using that for job.
Yeah, come on.
It's really lovely. Thank you.
Down.
What's your name? Scott. Hey, Scott. This is Scott.
He's a ham. Yeah.
You got flash. Connie?
Lakes that calmly lie yonder, like Yosemite, all land of cliffs and waterfalls, of snowy summits reaching to the sky.
You know what?
There's bird and flowers, da-dee-da-da-da-dee-da-dum. If we wander far away, we count the moments lost we spend away from you.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, that was it.
You ought to learn that one.
Yeah, I haven't had occasion to sing it, but I could easily bring it all back.
Yeah. Well,
Yosemite,
land of cliffs and water.
Oh, rock-bound lakes. Shining, sparkling to the sky. Like seeress old, you weave a spell that captures us. With bird and flower and skies of sparkling blue. Yosemite, though we may wander far away, we count the moments lost we spend away from you.
Oh, beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll sing that one.
Yeah, that's it. The one there, if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it better than the Danny Boy words. They're so sad.
Yeah. That's an easy one to remember.
Good.
Carl, when you went on that hike you were telling about this morning, on the list of supplies and things, one bottle of porter.
Oh, we made a lemonade. It was kind of an acid concentrate. You add water, something like lemonade. Porto. No liquor.
No, I didn't.
No,
didn't think it was. I
didn't
figured it was a drink, but I
No, that's Porto. It was popular in they have various drinks that can mix with powder now, you know. It was that sort of thing, but it was liquid.
And you didn't have to carry water back then?
Oh, we carried water, but this was a nice tasty drop, you know, something sour.
Well, you know,
Yeah, we
charge you pump now.
we took it on a good quantity of those dehydrated big beans, big sackful, because we ate them up. That was our main meal.
When I heard you say you carried water, does that mean that you did not drink the water out of the creek?
Oh, no, not at all. We drank freely. There was no such thing as GRD or anything like that. We drank freely out of any creek. Yeah. Good chance.
Did you ever go on any trips with Ferdinand? Was he much of a...
No, he's always tied up in the past.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever took a day off.
Yeah.
That was his whole life.
Yeah. He used to sing Twilight on the Trail, I remember that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I think I probably...
That's a good cowboy song.
I was in years, they take the people out on a walk out in the meadow there, and they show them a big rock that was split. And he attributed that to me as I had split the rock like that.
And out came Porto.
I believe it.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well, shall we head off to a meadow somewhere?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead for a meadow.
Let's go for a walk.
You bet. Thanks again, Carl.
Good hearing you.
Oh, I saw your hand moving.
Yes, thanks.